I can share this with you also.
Wonderful. Can you give me permission to share my screen, like make me a
Uh,
co-host?
yes.
Awesome.
There we go. Should be. You have it
Perfect.
now?
Yeah, looks
Cool.
good.
Perfect.
Thank
Perfect. So
you.
I'm just gonna. So I'm gonna apologize for the Facebook Live event. This is just to show you we did it. We're gonna do this on Zoom instead. We're sharing this link out. So when you get it, feel free to comment and ask any questions after this. All right, Kim, it is yours. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Lawrence. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into this. So everything that happened with Facebook Live kind of tested this already, but we're gonna work on some locus of control and stress management. So my name is Kim Payne. I work at the Eating Disorder Treatment Center. I also am getting a second master's degree in applied sports psychology. So all of this stuff kind of works on how to help you work on some mental strength training. It's gonna be more of concept stuff versus techniques. So this actually lasts longer and helps you to be able to use this in all kinds of situations. So first off, just the objectives of what we'll be talking about. So this is internal and external locus of control. We'll get into what that's about today. Also some radical acceptance and goal attainment, focusing on attaining goals rather than just focusing on achieving, which language shift there can actually help you be more successful. Next parts are just challenging your distorted thinking and then working on some self-care and using all of these skills today to work on overall stress management. So first off, locus of control is the degree to which an individual feels a sense of agency in his or her life. So basically, how much control do you feel like you have over what's happening in your life? So the quote over here on the side you see is, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So this is what we are going to be focusing on today, is kind of how we are taking control over what happens to us rather than being impacted so much by the environment or external events. So as you see here, internal is this focus of I make things happen. So my world is dictated by my actions. The external locus of control is some of these thoughts that we experience from time to time of like, why bother? This always happens to me. Life is not fair. This kind of thinking means that things happen to you versus you having autonomy or control over your own life and your decision making. So some signs of external locus of control, and before I jump on into this, I just want to make it clear that everybody goes on a continuum of their locus of control. And it's very important that we allow ourselves to recognize that sometimes we go to these places and it does not mean that we're stuck in these places. We can get ourselves out of them as long as we recognize it and challenge ourselves to work on building that mental strength and overcoming some of these thought patterns that we might come up against. So the first part is excuse making. So I normally tell people this is the same thing as giving reasons of why you cannot do something. An excuse usually seems like something critical, or you are being judgmental towards yourself if you're making excuses, but it just means that you're creating reasons of why you can't reach your goals. This really happens when we're feeling stressed because it's really hard for us to find a solution. I mean, that explains stress in general. So the excuse making could sound like, I would have made time for this if I didn't have to do X, Y, and Z, or I had no other choice, I had to do this thing. In the end, the only thing that is excuses or reasons why we didn't do what we really wanted to do. This can lead to us feeling helpless or powerless. So when you do not feel like you have any control over what happens in your life, you can feel like you're stuck in just what is going on right now. So feeling like you cannot make any other change. My favorite is the last quotation here. If only my boss, significant other, whoever it might be, would have done this or that or the other. So this is something that our society really tends to teach us, is that we should blame someone else. And it leads us to feeling more helpless and powerless because we can't change other people. We just really need to work on figuring out what our actions are doing to help us reach our goals. So another sign of an external locus of control is when we do not even give ourselves credits for our successes. So everything good that happens to us is because of someone else. So again, this is on a continuum, is that I always teach people is find spirituality or giving credit where credit is due. However, if you're not giving credit to yourself, likely you're not going to feel good about what you're doing because you're not recognizing that you have a huge part in the choices you're making in your life. Another part of this is blaming others for your failure. So this is that flip side of the coin of it's not my fault, if they would have done this, kind of the same way of feeling helpless or powerless is you're not taking responsibility for anything that's happening in your life. And this is a big one for people is to say like, I could have done this if this person hadn't gotten my way. Part of our building our internal locus of control is to figure out how we get what we want, regardless of anything that might come in our way. So as you see like the steps here in the quote, with great power comes great responsibility. If you no longer are blaming other people for the things happening in your life, you do have to take the responsibility that you are in charge. So this is something that can deter people from having this internal locus of control because you then do not have anybody to blame. As you can see, the steps up is that self-control, that decision-making that you're going to have in your own life leads you to some more freedom, not feeling pinned down by other people, and being able to have values and choices in your life that you really want. Then we get our outcomes, and then we can learn and take things away from those. Without these opportunities, we don't have the chance to learn anything in life. We remain stuck. You may feel this way sometimes in your life is that you're stuck, you have no options, but it's really us being able to decide what we can do and taking the action to do it. So again, first and foremost, this is all about building this way of thinking. And we're going to talk about challenging some different patterns of thought. But building this internal locus of control is something that's going to serve you in all areas of life. So whether that is in the gym and working on your strength, or if it's in your job or your relationships, is being able to have an internal locus of control benefits you in establishing the life you want to live. So first off is you are in charge of your own fate. This means that you have to have goals and ideas of what you want to work towards. You also, like I just mentioned, is take responsibility for your actions. This includes your inaction. So if you decide that you really want something, but more days than not, you're not doing it, obviously you don't want it, or obviously something's getting in your way. So we do have to take responsibility for the times that we're not engaging in the changes that we want to make. The next part is about confidence. So this is another thing society tells us not to have too much of. So I do not believe in that at all. I believe that we should be extremely confident. If you do not believe in yourself and your ability to get your goals or to reach the life you want to live, you're likely not going to do it, because we have to feel able to do something in order to continue being motivated to do it. So we can look at each situation as being unique. We can start at the present moment and look forward as what we want to learn and how we want to grow, knowing that whatever has happened to us in the past does not necessarily need to dictate anything that we do going forward. This goes with working hard. So this is somewhat of the millennial, and not to like disrespect any millennials who may watch this video, but this idea that we should just be rewarded with success, that we should just have things because we want them or because we deserve them. So one thing that you have to come up against in the internal locus of control is that you don't right out off the bat deserve anything other than the opportunity to pursue what you want. Success comes from working hard, focusing on what you want, continuing to put the effort in, even on the days where it's hard, or even on the days that you're not necessarily focused on that end goal. You need to get back on track towards working hard towards what you want. So the next piece of this, and it really comes up with everything going on right now in the world and COVID. So I know the post is talking about how to manage some of this stress around like quarantine life right now. We do not have a choice. So this is reality. Radical acceptance is, no, I can't just get over this. It's definitely impacting my day-to-day life. Just like everybody is experiencing some kind of hardship, we have to accept reality as it is. We do not get the option to change reality. The only thing we do have an option to do is find the reasons that reality is the way it is, and then learn to continue pursuing our goals otherwise. So my favorite line on this is that bottom piece, and I will build a life worth living. This means that whatever happens, whatever gets in my way, I'm not going to be so fixated on dwelling on that moment. Instead, I'm going to continue moving forward to my goals. And this is a lot easier said than done, but we're going to talk a little bit about that and how having this mindset of radical acceptance and in that internal locus of control can continue you propelled towards your goals and what you want to be doing in your life. So I put this reflection on radical acceptance and just kind of to poke fun a little bit about where we're all at, because I can speak honestly for myself, is that I have been stuck in this like battle internally of like, well, I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept quarantine. I refuse to accept COVID. It did not cure COVID and it did not end quarantine. I've been working from home since March. So my fight against it has really only caused me internal distress. However, I've taken this approach now of like, all right, well, this is my life. And I now know I want to focus on X, Y, and Z. And maybe I can actually build this other part of my life while other things are on hold. So it's like being able to accept it and continue working towards our goals, even though things are not exactly the way that we want them to be. So this encompasses all stress, whether it's pandemic or political stuff, but even everyday things you can overcome by just saying like, I'm not fighting reality. Like I get it and I can take something towards this. And what am I going to do to make sure that I'm continuing to work towards those goals? The first piece of this is you need to know what you're working on. So when I say goals a lot, and I've mentioned that, is because I think it's really important that we figure out where we are going in life. So what do you want to be working towards? And often the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what am I missing? So this is a part of what life do you want to live? What direction are you going? And then saying, how do I make this happen? So I mentioned before that goal attainment versus goal achievement is really important. And this is because a goal attainment refers to a theory that says that we are capable of overcoming any obstacles in the way of our goals as long as we're preparing for them. So identify the reasons that you're motivated and identify how you will get in your own way. So this internal locus of control is saying that the only thing that can really get in your way is you and kind of the distorted thoughts that you have about it. Yes, the external world will happen, but you want to make sure that you are able to overcome that by mastering your mind and saying, okay, I'm in charge of how I act and my decisions every single day, and I'm choosing to work towards what I want. Again, what are you hoping to achieve? And see yourself through the end. So a lot of the work that I do in mental strength training is helping people imagine the life that they want to live. So this may seem silly, but it's really important that we have this image of where we want to be, because then we feel motivated to work towards it. It's also extremely helpful when you're feeling stressed to be able to have an idea of where you want to go. You're going to be able to tap into that imagery and that mental routine to be able to work towards that life and continue finding the ways to overcome anything that gets in your way. So some of the things that we get in our way is our mind. So I normally joke with people is that we are very developed creatures, and yet for some reason our mind has developed on the wrong track. So a lot of times we give way more power to our emotions and how we're feeling, then our thought patterns get completely off track. However, we are built to survive and we are built to overcome. And we almost take away from that capability by getting caught in some of these mental traps. So these are referred to as cognitive distortions, and they're probably pretty familiar. You've heard of them before. This is just examples of how to challenge them. So if you have that all or nothing kind of thinking, it's leaning more into the shades of gray. So instead of saying I'm a failure, figuring out what pieces you can take away from a situation and what you can do differently the next time. This is really hard if you're a perfectionist or you're very success driven, but the way to be successful and continue being successful is being able to continue building on what you've done before. The next part is jumping to conclusions. So I have not met anybody who can tell the future. And I often challenge people when they tell me that they're going to be incapable of doing something. So the quote, I will never be able to. Okay, you haven't been able to yet, but you still could in the future. And this is a very deep mental trap that people get caught in, and they often have difficulty getting out of it because they lack that confidence that I referred to earlier. So it's just having this confidence and this self-esteem of saying, if I want it bad enough, I'm going to find a way to get it. The next part is catastrophizing. So we've seen a lot of this in 2020, is just saying like, this is the worst. We want to break it down into smaller pieces. And this is really helpful when you're overcoming some day-to-day stress of just saying like, okay, this is not what I wanted. These are the pieces I don't like, and here's what I'm going to do with it. So I referenced earlier is like being stuck working from home in quarantine, which is a very relatable situation that I'm sure a lot of people are going through right now, is just, okay, I don't like this, but I like the fact that I get to be home with my kid. And I like the fact that I don't have to wear actual pants every day. I get to wear yoga pants a lot. Like there's these pieces that I can value, even though it does not feel like a time that I enjoy. I'd rather be at work. A big piece of this is we do not make decisions based on our emotions. We would be in a bigger mess if we did. So most of the time, if you are making decisions or you're reasoning with yourself based on your emotions, you know you need to find a balance within your rational thoughts. So challenging yourself to say, okay, I feel disappointed and I know I'm going to make the best out of this situation. We do not have to live in our emotions. And in fact, those emotional responses are very quick. So we can't stop the neurochemical response, yet we can stop our connection to it, our playing into it by focusing so much on the thoughts that perpetuate it. The last one is my favorite, above favorites of all of them, is the shoulds. And it's just because then I get to tell people is stop shoulding all over yourself. This is just expecting yourself to be somewhere you're not. Doesn't necessarily help you to say, oh, I should be doing this already. Okay, well, if you're saying that to yourself, you're not doing it right now. So that thought is not helpful at all. You can focus more on the want tos and the wishes. Like, I want to be able to do this right now. I wish I had it done. Those are things that continue to perpetuate that momentum and the motivation that we had before. So again, a relatable example is I should be able to have a normal Thanksgiving. Okay, so you're not, like that's not happening. There's definitely going to be some changes. Maybe changing it into I want to have holidays with my family. I wish we weren't going through this right now. We do have to make adjustments because we don't control reality. The only thing we get to do is control how we're thinking about it and the way we're responding to it. One really helpful thing is to establish a mantra. So if anybody is used to doing meditation or mindfulness, you may have found a home word or a word that brings you back to your center. I like to focus on things that are motivating and bring us back to this present moment where we can take control. And again, that responsibility for the decisions you're making in your life. So here's just some examples of what you can be doing. The right here, right now, I decide my fate, this leads to what I want. All those mantras are stemming from an internal locus of control where we say we are in charge of what happens in our life and we are in charge of the decisions that we're making every single day. It's very important to also release what does not serve you. So having a complete internal locus of control is not helpful either. So I mentioned before is we need a continuum. We need to be able to be flexible in our thinking. That internal locus of control will also drive you to be highly self-critical and have extreme expectations for yourself. So this is where like those real perfectionists land, is in this internal locus of control, which is great. You're motivated, you're achieving a lot of things in your life, but you also beat up on yourself when you don't reach those things. That's not a healthy approach either. We want to find a middle and that flexible range where we can be goal-oriented, think positively about our future, and be able to pursue goals even though there might be some fear. All of this with that self-reflection and acceptance that we talked about earlier will help you continue towards flexible thinking and actual less stress, because now you know that you have goals, you're driven, and yet you do not have to wait for the world to happen. You're pursuing it, and if it doesn't happen the way that you want it to happen, you can kind of look about how like the external world influenced that. We are social creatures, we're going to be influenced by the external world. it's unavoidable. It's just about how we look at it, how we think about it, and how we respond to it. So this is just about overcoming your own personal barriers. So focusing on some of these things is really helpful because these are experienced by a lot of different people. Most of these things are very generalized because we all have the same kind of patterns of thinking, and we're all influenced by society to think a certain way. So the first part of overcoming your barriers is only focusing on what you can control, letting go of things that you cannot control. Looking at the situation rather going to self-critique, looking at information that you can learn from it, learning from what you did not do well, what you want to change, and avoiding the beating yourself up. So again, just like the shoulds, it's not really helpful to beat yourself up about something that already happened. It's not going to make you want to do something different in the future. It's just going to make you feel bad about yourself and the situation you're in. If you imagine that continuum, you just skyrocketed to that external where you're controlled by the past events and you're controlled by things that are not necessarily in your control any longer. Again, reiterating is that you need to be responsible. You need to ask for support. If you can't do it alone, is seek out people that know how to do it. So being a mental health therapist, I usually tell people is they are the experts in them. I will never know more about them. However, I know a lot about what I know. I know a lot about mental health. I know a lot about mental strength training, and I am happy to be a support for people who reach out for that. But this is also support from your friends and your family, especially during times like a pandemic. You are not alone. A lot of the things that you're experiencing are going to be things that your best friend's experiencing. Maybe a parent, a family member is also going through a similar situation. Ask for that support so it brings it back to more relatability. Relatability, autonomy, both help us feel motivated because then we can see, okay, if they can handle it this way, so can I. And that's just going to continue propelling you forward towards your goals. The last part, again, is you don't control your feelings. They are a microsecond of an experience and the neurochemicals going on in your brain. You are responsible for how you handle the things that happen to you and how you're handling the external world. So I had to add this basically because I love this picture, but because this is another thing that society tells us to not be. So you cannot be confident, you cannot be selfish. So selfish is not a bad word. We need to be able to focus on what we want in order to live lives that we are happy with, in order to reach towards those goals and to continue working on them. So I put this example on here because I know it's something people are experiencing right now because everything has been shut down again. But if we have set goals around things, we have to find ways around them, and we have to be willing to be a little bit selfish to get them. So gyms are closed down right now. I know everything's going to virtual settings. People are losing support systems because of that. Really, we don't get to control COVID. We do not get to control shutdowns. We do get to control how we're responding to it. So you could take that external locus of control response and say, I have no control over this. I'm just going to hang back for the next 2 weeks and whatever will be, will be. If that works for you, great. If that's really where your goals land, great. However, if your goals are to continue maintaining a healthy life, both mentally and physically, you want to make sure that you're continuing to make choices that align with that. So this may mean that you need to push back other plans to prioritize those goals. They may be different than what you're used to. They may be a change to your schedule, but being selfish is a priority when we need to focus on our goals, especially when we're being impacted by the external world so much. So with that, and everybody can share this with their significant others. I know my husband laughed when I told him this part, but being selfish actually helps you have a healthier relationship. So if you are selfish and you are focused on your goals, you're benefiting your relationships because first off, it is contagious. If you are thinking and acting in a way that's bringing positive experience in your life, you're likely to pass that on. So just as if our body language or our facial expressions or our mood is causing somebody else to maybe feel a little bit more angry or frustrated or upset, depressed, whatever it might be, we have that power in the positive way too. So when we're feeling good about who we are, usually the people that we're with will start feeling good too. So that part is, it's contagious. Is if we're feeling motivated, you can motivate your significant other as well. I also like that it sets the golden standard. So it's kind of the do what I'm doing type of thing. If we give ourselves permission to be selfish and to prioritize our needs, we're also giving that permission to people in our lives, other people that we have relationships with. It's almost that we expect them to also be taking care of themselves, which is a big deal. Like, we need to challenge the codependency and challenge our desire to get our needs met by other people. We need to first and foremost meet our own needs. And the last part here is just the old story of when you get on an airplane and the flight attendant tells you to put your mask on before you help anyone else. So if anybody's a parent, really relate to this, is that probably first instinct, at least I know it was for me, was like, okay, well, hopefully that never happens. Was probably my first response. But second was, okay, I got to get that mask on my kiddo first. Like, that's priority. Their life is so important. After so much work as a therapist on my own and just knowledge of how all of this works, I realized that it's more important for me to take care of my emotional state before I try to give anything to anyone else. So two things could happen if you try to put someone else's mask on first. If you do that, you're going to start to panic more. They're going to panic more. You're going to have difficulty getting the mask on, and you're just going to be a mess. You might have a delay in trying to get their mask on, and then by the time you get your mask on, you're going to be in a full-blown panic attack. Even worse than that is if you focus on getting their mask on, maybe you do it and maybe you do it in time, but you are deprived of oxygen and you pass out. So we do need to be selfish in the sense of we need to take care of ourselves before we try to take care of anyone else, because us in a frantic mode or in a place that we do not feel like we're managing our own emotional state is not helpful to anyone else at that point. So all of that being said is kind of blanket of how do we change our thought process about things? How do we change how we look at the world, which is really important. However, we also need some techniques for stress management. So I kind of referred to it earlier, but my go-to is humor. So everybody who knows me knows this, is I usually make a joke about something, even in a serious situation, because that is my coping mechanism. And I use it in a healthy way, but we need to know that we can use what works for us. So after humor, if you choose to use that, other things we talked about was identify those unhealthy or unhelpful thought patterns. Work to challenge them. It's really hard to catch yourself in them because we're so used to thinking that way, but you want to work towards allowing yourself to recognize it, catch it, and challenge it. The next part is focus on what you're grateful for. So this might be writing your gratitude list to somebody really important to your, or gratitude letter, excuse me, to somebody really important in your life, or making a list. This is so we're reflecting on the positive things that are happening, even though we may feel consumed by other external things. Next part, we've already focused on this a lot, is prioritizing self-care. The only piece I'm going to tie in here is focusing on nutrition. I think that this is really important, not only because I'm an eating disorder therapist, but because we're often responsive to our emotional cues based in hunger. So we'll overeat or we're undereat. And really, if we're not paying attention to how we're feeling our body, it's hard for our emotions to get under control. So being careful to make sure that you're checking in with how you're feeling your body to live the life you want to live. Again, implement that mantra, find one that works for you, something that's going to be motivating, something that's going to pause you in the moment and get you to focus on your goals again. The best possible self, I use this a lot with people when they feel like they do not have an idea of what their goals are. So this might benefit you if you are the type of person who can think about immediate goals or what that next step is, but you do not know what that end picture is. So there is research that shows that if we take 20 minutes a week to think about our best possible self, so a time when everything in our life is just the way we want it to be, if you take 20 minutes to think about that and jot it down, you're going to be more motivated to work towards that. That also plays into the last point there, or the second to last, which is practice mastery. This is setting goals that we can achieve. So a lot of times when people are stuck in a place that they do not feel that they're competent in what they want to be doing, usually have them pick something extremely easy to work on. And this is not to like taunt them or tease them or like accept the point that they're not capable of something. It's saying, all right, well, I just need that emotional response of I can do whatever I want to do. I can accomplish my goals. And then it helps us build on that. So a lot of this is about how do we continue that cycle towards being successful and being motivated towards our goals. The last part is minimize your schedule. And I'm going to tie my humor in this, but a good friend of mine often challenges me on this one because I am somebody who schedules everything to a T. And I like to overpack my schedule because I like to be successful and I like to reach my goals. She jokes with me about like, okay, imagine you're throwing all these balls in the air and you can let go ones that will not break. I laugh because she says balls. I laugh every single time because she says that. And then I go down to saying, okay, not everything in my life is breakable and not everything in my life is going to fall apart if I don't do it. So there are things that we need to hang on to make sure we're living the life that we want to live. And there's things that we can let go of. So you do not need to be in control of every single thing. Likely, if you let go of it, somebody in your life is going to help you by picking it back up. So these are just techniques, again, how to use that internal locus of control to implement it, change it, kind of a brief summary of what we went over today. Lastly, thank you so much for watching. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have about mental health training or mental strength training. My name is Kim Payne. I am a mental strength therapist and work with applied sports psychology. Any questions you have, happy to answer them.
Awesome, Kim. That was great. Thank you. I definitely learned a lot there. I'm gonna what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna capture this off of the link and I'm gonna upload it to YouTube and I'll share the link out like that.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me see if I can stop recording. Oh.